Be taking a look at what critics have qualified as outright violation of human rights in Cameroon, and a glaring case is that of Justice Paul Abine, senior Supreme Court magistrate now on retirement, who was arrested and detained for hundreds of days without the charges being read out to him. And now our guest in this edition of the program is Aya Abine. He is the spokesperson of the Aya family. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mr. Bowley. Thanks for having me.
How is that?
It's better to say God is keeping him, because I am very surprised. The family is very surprised he has not broken down up till now. When he left detention, he left there as a half-dead man with a very delicate heart condition, and he had lost his sight on the left eye. The doctors told us surgery was imminent and surgery had to be urgently carried out, but we've not yet put together the money that was required for him to go abroad for the surgery. So I should just say God is keeping him, because by the grace of God, contrary to the medical reports, that he has not broken down by now. We thank God for his life.
Now, how far have you gone with the quest for justice concerning his case?
Yeah, we seized some international courts. We seized the courts as a family, and we seized the courts as a party. Though I'm not a member of the party, I'm talking of the party. Yeah. So we seized the Court of Arbitration at the UN, or the Court on Arbitrary Arrests. We're yet to get a definitive answer from them. We know the letter is already at their decks. You know, those things take time. Those are international things. They receive cases like that from all over the world, so it takes time. Then the party sees the African Court on People's and Human Rights too. On Human and People's Rights, that's what they call it. So we are expecting those people to grant us justice, because justice has been denied to us in our own country, which is a disgrace for Cameroon.
Now, when you say justice has been denied, the Aya family, and particularly Justice Paul Abine, who is your father, what exactly do you mean?
Well, by law, you cannot arrest somebody, you cannot detain somebody on a Saturday, on a public holiday. That's the law. Unless you pick up that person flagrant delicto, that's somebody just committing an offense that requires imprisonment or detention on a Saturday, a public holiday, Saturday weekend. So Paul was kidnapped. It's not even an arrest, because there was no warrant of arrest. He was kidnapped by forces of law and order, and shamefully these forces of law and order, they dragged him. There was a certain point he even almost fell down. I was there, he was in front of me. Dragged him out of his home. He was even bare-bodied. Bare-bodied, you can't imagine that. Yeah. It took my intervention, because I got so angry at a certain point. I told that guy that this cannot continue. You can't do that. At least permit him put on clothes. So he was picked up on a Saturday and detained on a Saturday. 1. 2. By law.
Is Saturday in violation of the law?
Yeah, in violation of the law, of course. All those articles there of the Criminal Procedure Code, you have there are a lot of articles that have been violated. Worse off is the fact that he is a judge, and the Criminal Procedure Code protects judges from being picked up like that. If there is, let me even use the word Congo-sa, because the French put it very well. See, let's susceptible. If there is just Congo-sa in the quartier that he may have committed the crime, the President of the Supreme Court appoints a judge to investigate, not to pick him up, to investigate, to hear the affair. Is it possible that this man, this judge, may have committed an affair? And if at all, committed the crime. And if at all he has committed the crime that warrants hearing, there has to be a panel of judges appointed who are at the least of his grade and above. That was not done. He just came and picked up the guy, pulled him on the ground, and went and dumped him in the cell, a cell that I believe was programmed to kill him. In that cell there was no aeration, no holes. That's even pigs, you know, people have called us cats, rats and dogs. Yeah. Even rats and dogs and pigs have houses like our dogs that have aeration. They're entitled to medical care whenever he warrants. They're entitled to food, they're entitled to their visitors. Mr. Ayapol symbolizes, he epitomizes the Anglophone problem, because if a judge protected by everything that the law protects him could be treated like that. I don't want to talk of the lawyers and the teachers that are big. I'm talking of a judge who is protected by the law. If he can be treated like that,
a senior magistrate of the Supreme Court, the highest court in the country.
He was the highest ranked in the highest court of the land.
And it should be noted that at the time he was picked up, he was still on duty.
Of course, he was a sitting judge. He had his office, he had his car. I gave back the car after he was forcefully dumped on retirement. I gave back. He had all those things. He had all those attributes. It was only on, I think it was July 2017 that the decree came out sending him on retirement. So before that, he was a judge, sitting judge. That is an abomination to the judiciary, if at all we have a judiciary. And the most shameful thing about all this nonsense is the fact that the judges condoned, the judges were, forgive me for saying, they were accomplices to it. The judges were quiet. Contrary to the lawyers, I really appreciated the lawyers. Contrary to the lawyers who stood up as a unit to say no, the judges just laughed at it. There were some who even told us, the family, they are watching, that your dad was making a lot of noise, so now we hope you'll not make noise anymore. Coming from judges. It was a shame to Cameroon, a big shame.
Now, when you look at all what you're describing now, where is the problem? Where could the problem be coming from? The judicial system, the interference of the executive arm of the state in the judiciary?
Mm-hmm. The problems can be described in two ways, as I said earlier. The problem, first, is the fact that Mr. Ayapol is an Anglophone. That's the problem. There is no gainsaying. He is an Anglophone. That could not have happened to a Francophone judge. That could not have happened. We've seen cases of Francophone judges that have been involved in some nasty affairs, such as the disappearance of babies, corruption and all that. And it's just business as usual. That's the first problem. It is because he is an Anglophone judge. That's why that happened to him. That's the first, because I don't see any other explanation. First, he was picked up at the heart of the Anglophone crisis. And even when he was released, we don't even know what he did, because he was never tried before any court. Were the people even seizing the courts, saying that, but why did you pick up this man? Nobody ever told why they picked him up. So they just came and dragged that old man out of his home, went and dumped him somewhere. And some good day, when the good Lord just touched their hearts, they just said, okay, get out and go back home. Till date, we don't know the crime he committed. That's the first thing. Secondly, I don't believe we have a judiciary. A judiciary is just, maybe we'll call it the executive judiciary. They say we have three arms of government on paper, but I believe we have just an arm of government. The executive judiciary, the executive legislative, and the executive legislative. Getting into parliament, nobody passes a private member's bill in parliament. Everything in parliament comes from the executive. The bills come in, and there are times you don't change even, you don't cut even a T, and you don't dot even an I. So we have just the executive, and the executive. Get even to the Opération IPV, as you call it. Everything comes from the Minister of Justice. If we need justice, if we need to recover those funds and prevent embezzlers from embezzling public funds, we don't need all those executive people doing. We just need to empower the police. We let them do their job and do their job well. We don't need the TCS and all that. We need just the normal courts. The courts will do the job, if at all we have the courts in the country.
Now you're talking there about the highly centralized system of government in Cameroon, because officially we know that Cameroon is functioning under the presidential system of government, but in reality some critics have said the country is instead functioning under a presidentialist system of government where everything comes from the top.
Yeah, they are very right. I'll give you a small example. I am the Aya Foundation, president of the foundation. We went to Bamenda to offer food to detainees in Bamenda. to offer food and relief-saving materials to people who need those materials. We're not going there to do some politics. The foundation doesn't even do politics. Nothing with politics, not politically affiliated. They tell us in Bamenda to go to Yaoundé to get permission to come and give food to people who are in Bamenda. It's like telling people before you have to maybe even breathe oxygen, maybe we'll get to that point, you have to go and get a pass from Yaoundé before you come and get your own portion of oxygen in your region. I believe if we had implemented the decentralization that's not been implemented for 21 years now, if we had done that, we wouldn't have gotten to this position of the senseless war we are fighting against our own citizens. See, what does this centralization do? And that is the problem with decentralization. Centralization appoints appointees who lord over elected representatives. I put it this way. We have elected President Paul Biya, those who voted for him and not, for example, I didn't vote for him. We have elected President Paul Biya, President of the Republic. Once he's president for all Cameroonians, including you and me and people we didn't vote for him. But France gets up, or the UN, and says, well, though you have voted for President Paul Biya as President of your Republic, we appoint maybe President Macron to be President of Cameroon. That's what the decentralization we have on paper does. So even decentralization, if such T's and I's are not cut and dotted or wiped off that document, it would not solve the current problem.
Is that not the root cause of what critics have called today outright violation of human rights in Cameroon today, not only within the context of the Anglophone crisis, but in other areas too? Talking about the fight against Boko Haram, there are many people who have been allegedly victimized because of this.
It has hugely contributed to the fact that nothing is working in this country. Nothing at all. Nothing is working. We are going down and down and down the drain.
Now, coming back to the case of your father, Justice Ayapol Abini, the case filed once at a certain time disappeared between the appeal court of the Central Region and the Supreme Court.
It's a shameful thing. That's why I'm even laughing. Yeah, the appeal court and the Supreme Court are separated just by a wall. So you just need to walk through the appeal court and get into the Supreme Court. At a certain stage of, we appealed, we seized the court that habeas corpus for illegal arrest and detention of a victim. Any Cameroonian who is illegally arrested and detained can seize the courts for illegal arrest and illegal detention. And by law, such a person has to immediately release. So we seized the court of first instance that has jurisdiction for those cases. They just threw the thing out. They called us there someday and said, what did they even say? That he's been, we're not charged. That is not charged. They said he's been suspected for terrorist activities, so he cannot release him. Look, that provision of the law does not say that if somebody is suspected, just suspicion for whatever, it does not apply. No, it applies. If you are illegally arrested and detained, you are released immediately. Full stop. Why you are suspected, okay, it has nothing to do. So the man threw out the thing. We went to the Court of Appeal, the same. They just looked for, at times there's no hearing even, just a few seconds, and they threw out the thing. And they come behind and say, well, please, there is nothing we can do. You know that this thing is a very sensitive case. We're waiting for orders from above. Then it was sent to the Supreme Court. By law, the Supreme Court has to hear the case within a period of time. It took beyond double that amount of time. And at the level of the Supreme Court, we went there, going downstairs, coming upstairs, going and coming up. And they cannot find the file. Where is the file? They cannot find the file. The Supreme Court tells us to go down to the appeal court. The appeal court tells us to come back up to the Supreme Court. And we did that and did that and did that. And we just said, well, everything for God. That is what is happening in a country that has a judiciary. It's a shame. I belong to the group of people who believe that we don't even need that judiciary. Just leave the executive do what he wants to do with the country.
And now you took the case to the international level, and you're expecting justice from outside.
Yeah, we're expecting justice now. It's a shameful thing. We're expecting international interference into something that could have just, it required just a serious judge to say this is a shame to our country, let's stop this. There is a wonderful judge, even at the level of the presidency. There are insiders who are saying this thing is madness. A judge called Nami, he works with the presidency. How can you arrest, kidnap a judge? He spoke for some time, and the French press and some French-speaking citizens crucified him that he's supporting secessionists. Remember, this man is presumed innocent until judgment is passed, according to the Constitution. So he's not even been charged, not even to talk of heard, but he's already called a secessionist. There is the advisor to the presidency, Mr. Penda Ikoka. He too came up and said, but this is disgraceful. You kidnap a judge, not even an arrest, because till date we're still waiting for a warrant of arrest. You kidnap an advocate general of the Supreme Court. He is a symbol of the law. There are many symbols of the law, but those people are symbols of the law. So if you pick up this man, what is the message you are sending to the common man? That nobody is protected by the law in this country. They can do that to him. Then you and I were just anybody can do anything. And it's what is happening down the southwest and the northwest region now. There is no law. You get the forces of law and order burning down villages, shooting people with intent to kill. The law, for example, regard to maintaining peace and order, it doesn't require a firearm. It doesn't require a firearm. If it gets to the extent that there is serious threat by unarmed people, I can call it that way, you can use rubber bullets. But our military men are shooting with live bullets that with intent to kill. My foundation has a lot of those cases. There are a lot of those victims who've been taken care of. For example, young Ellen, she was shot in the eye. Sitting in her home on her bed with her family, enjoying the peace of the day. The military shoot her in the eye. She lost the eye. The face is badly damaged. Thanks be to God, the foundation was able to do what it could do to put together the funds that are required to fly her abroad for surgery. There are thousands of kids. We have Menyong George. He's currently at Bingo, Mutengere, shot on the leg. The leg was completely shattered, bone completely broken. The leg is rotting off. We have Willie Broad. He could be watching. We have Belwin Imankong, shot on the back. The bullet went through the spine. He's paralyzed. I don't want to mention those who have been killed. That is the consequence of a judiciary that is not working. That's a consequence of a country where the executive is above the constitution of the country. Above the constitution of the country. That is terrible.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. Time for us to take a look at what the newspapers reported this week. Coming up, the press review with Smart Jikangibre.
The Anglophone crisis, the senatorial elections, and Operation Sparrowhawk were the most read stories on newspapers this week. Beginning with the senatorial elections, which took place on March 25th, the Guardian Post reported that security forces escorted councillors to vote in the northwest and southwest regions respectively, adding that helicopter ferried Lebialem councillors to vote in Chang. In Fako, ghost councillors vote in place of Boya Mayor, while SDF accused CPDM for planting video camera at the polling station in Bengui. The Median newspaper was rather cold in the story, saying that amid Ambazonian threat, senatorial elections proceeded in calm and serenity in the southwest and northwest regions. On the same story, the Sun newspaper revealed that the race to the Senate was an election of ballots and bullets as guns rent the air in Kupe Maninguba, Lebialem before and during voting, with Professor Kale as head of list for the SDF, confirming that there was no voting in Bangem. The Post, reporting on the senatorial elections, tells us that Atanganje and Elekam Director General give conflicting reports, and Eden says fear, tension and surprises damping senatorial elections with gun battles in Bangem, Tombel. They also announced the battle between Ekema Patrick, mayor of Boya, and Senator Mbela Mukichas, whose war of words rages on. The Info newspaper also talks about the senatorial elections that CPDM councillors voted for SDF in Fako, while commercial bike riders and taxi drivers were simply arrested, and the Horizon announced that SDF is heading for victory in the Northwest region thanks to Lawan Bako's UDP and Bello Buba's UNDP that helped sink CPDM. The Voice reported that Ambazonian dogs of war ungovern Lebialem with the Red Dragons, signaling future South Sudan risk. The Guardian Post, in one of its issues, reported that Agbobala denies being sponsored by Atanganje to frustrate Anglophone struggle. In the midst of the crisis, the Guardian Post asked who should Biya be grateful to, the Anglophones or the Nordies. Finally, for the median, Francophones, precisely those from the Beti clan, excelled in concourse into Kondengi prison as the Special Criminal Court conducted exams stating names like that of Bekolo Ebe, Jodone Oyuno, Max Ohanja, and Atangana Kuna, all successful. The Sun announced that it was total panic as Operation Sparrow Hawk closed ex-government officials. The Voice says high-profile thieves parade Kondengi, and the Guardian Post tells us that Kondengi prison receives 4 new high-profile tenants. This is coming at a time when 7 top regime barons of Cam Water were cited as Atangana Kuna's alleged accomplices, and the Info simply puts it, Atangana Kuna are Kondengi.
That was the press review compiled by Smart Njikan Gabriel. Now, we're going to take a look at the deplorable situation of refugees, thousands of them, who are in neighboring Nigeria, languishing in pains, suffering. And our guest was in Nigeria. He saw, he felt their pains. Aya Abini, what did you see in Nigeria?
I saw the worst of sins that I don't think those sins, from what we learned from history, match the sins that occurred during the Second World War. There are about 50,000 plus Cameroonian refugees in Nigeria. I don't want to call them Anglophone refugees, they are Cameroonian refugees. I don't call them Amazonian, they are Cameroonian refugees. They have plus 50,000 Cameroonian refugees in Nigeria. The UN talks of 20,000 plus registered children and women. But I can authoritatively say there are plus 50,000 across 4 main states: Cross River State, Benue State, Taraba State, and Akwa Ibom State. Plus 50,000. There are stretches in Lagos and Abuja, people who are just fed up of the whole thing and they just believe they just have to integrate themselves in Nigeria. So there are some patches across Abuja, Lagos. I even received a call from Enugu that there are some people there who were they're in very bad shape, shot by the military. So our people are there, sleeping on the floor. Our girls are prostituting. I met some in Benue State. There are 2 particularly, I got your telephone numbers. I have to go back there and look for them and give them something to at least help them get a better life out of themselves. Our kids have water, even water is a luxury, but they have water for lunch. They get water from the river courses. The camp in Ikom, for example, we use the word camp, it's not really a camp, they're just buildings that the Nigerian government has given to our people, uncompleted buildings. The Nigerian government has been very kind. So in a small patch of maybe 2 meters or 3 meters square, you have kids, you have children, there's a difference between kids and children. You have the aged, you have parents and grandparents living together. So you have the really terrible education that the young and the very young are getting, sharing those spaces with very with experiences that are beyond your ages by the grown-ups, for example, smoking cigarettes, and it is terrible. One of the scenes that really touched me when I was there was that of a young boy, kid, 2 years of age, 2.5, eating with his brother. And at a certain point, he seizes the plate of food. When I say food, it's just some badly cooked rice. Food is an overstatement. He seizes the plate of fried rice, and his brother is running towards him, and he warns his brother and tells him, you saw those images, that no, his is enough. So it's about survival of the fetus. There is no food. Food is a luxury. So whenever somebody comes, an angel from heaven, you can see a grandparent and a daughter-in-law fighting for a sachet of oil, just about 150 francs CFA. You can see a grandmom cursing her granddaughter for refusing to share a cup of rice with her. That's how our people are living there, and they are dying by the day.
And they are now depending on men of goodwill, humanitarian organizations like the Aya Foundation, as well as the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, and the Nigerian government to survive. And their own government has said nothing, not even a word.
I thank you for that. You helped me to get somewhere. You see, the refugee crisis in Nigeria epitomizes the Anglophone problem, the Anglophone question. Let me illustrate. In the 80s, we came up as a nation. There was some national solidarity that had never been seen before to support victims of the SAM disaster just here in neighboring Yaoundé. People lost their lives in thousands. The nation stood as a person, and we supported those victims. We are still supporting them till date. In the 90s, I contributed 50 francs in the 90s. I was quite young. My dad put us together and said, the Lions are in America playing football and they need money. We were the first supporters of the Lions in our quarter in GRA. My mom gave 8,900. My memory does not fail me. I gave 50 francs, I'm the youngest. And my dad gave a lion share. The nation came together to support the Lions. In the early 2000s, Boko Haram came up with this nonsense. We, as a nation, came together and funded the troops in cash and kind. The same troops that are killing, shooting to kill citizens in both Anglophone regions, burning down villages. We came together as a nation. We supported the troops, our troops. About 4 years ago, a Seka struck. We lost thousands of Cameroonian souls, hundreds of Cameroonian souls. We came together again as a nation. We supported the victims, as we still do. I was among the people who went there on the field and condoned to the people. I have a colleague, you should be watching in the office, was among the victims. We came together as a nation. Now, why is the nation not coming together as a unit to support Cameroonian refugees in Nigeria? It is one of a number of things. Either they are all cats and rats and dogs, as they have been called. They don't need that kind of attention. Or they are all considered terrorists. Or they are saying they are lesser of Cameroonians than the English-speaking section of Cameroonians. It's one of all those possibilities. And the most when I met the second in command at Cross River State on Wednesday, the foundation went there. He asked me if I was a representative of the government. I said no. He asked me to present myself. I said, this is the Aya Foundation. I'm the president. He came to visit the refugees. He took my card. He asked for my ID card. He took his scan. He made some calls to Cameroon. And he said, okay, just wanted to be sure. And he asked me, is your government aware of what is happening here? I said, yes. Why has your government not sent just maybe a DO? You people have DOs there. You people have divisional office. Yes, yes, divisional office. Why has the government not sent just the DO nearby here, Manu, to come and visit their people here? I said, maybe we have it, they have it in the making. So if the government does not make a statement about its citizens, it's not about Anglo, it's citizens that are dying in neighboring Nigeria. The president, end of year speech, I met staunch TPDM people that will ask me, did the president really not mention the fact that we are here? I said, you heard the speech as I did. Staunch CPDM. My cousins used to have a fight with them in
Many of
Manu.
them were disappointed.
Extremely
They
disappointed.
had to cover a long distance just to go and watch the president's speech.
Yes.
And at the end of the day,
Exactly.
they were not satisfied.
They
were-
told me that they went for the speech. They were expecting their national president to just say something. He talked about refugees, Central Africa, in the East, and he didn't mention his citizens that are finding refuge. It is terrible. So, as I was saying, it just epitomizes the Anglophone problem. It's giving the impression that the radicals are right. Because the radicals, this is the message they're using to pass through their message, and they are successfully doing that. That, look, your dad, they tell me that, your dad, among the moderates, Mr. Balan Fontaine, Mr. Weber, even the Cardinal, they talk about dialogue. What happened to those who talked about dialogue? They picked them up and locked them, and they were tortured. Yeah, they were tortured. Torture can be psychological or physical. They were tortured for 8 months and they were released. Can't you see that those people don't consider us as they ought to just leave us settle this issue once and for all? And that is what is happening in the South and the Northwest regions now. The moderates have no voice. Nobody's listening to them.
The extremists have taken over.
The extremists have taken over and they are doing it. If something very divine doesn't occur in the coming months, I fear for what the situation there would be. I fear. The moderates, they have no place. That's why Mr. Bala, for example, can call for schools to resume for calm, and he's warned. He's told to sit down or they'll deal with him. That's why Mr. Fundi can call for calm and his house is burnt. That's why not even the Cardinal can contain the situation again. The radicals have taken over and they are doing it with some kind of magic that is unimaginable. They've seized the show.
Concerning government's concern or interest on the Anglophone refugees in Nigeria, the only statement we've been hearing from some members of government is come back home.
Come back home.
How can
I
you-
have been to Kwakwa. I have been to Didi village. I have been there. Villages burned down. So they burnt to the soil. I listened to Cardinal Tomi say over your wonderful station that he was, just before his Kaikilaki, he went there himself and saw a village completely burned down. I heard him say so. I've listened to the Bishop of Manfe say he went to Kembon and Didi village and he saw exactly what I saw. So you would be very surprised to hear that before the foundation went down to Nigeria, Mr. Ayapor and wife told me to get some desperate kids from Nigeria, very desperate kids who've lost everything, and bring them back to come and stay in the orphanage. We have an orphanage until some other time that they will be ready to fend for themselves. Also to bring back 10 kids. All the kids as young as 5, 4 said they are not coming back. Why are you not coming back? My house has been burned. My dad has been killed. I don't just want to think about coming back to Cameroon again. We met the girls, and even the girls are telling us their love affair with the country, they are putting question marks to that. They are not sure they will ever return anytime soon. That is a dangerous thing. It's like what you see on TV involving the terrorists. When you see a kid of 4 or 5 beheading, he's already taught that he has to behead an American. Then you understand that we've got to a point of no return. And before getting to government, I would even talk about our elites. Let's just imagine that the government does not care because they don't care. What are elites doing? Manu, for example, has the richest of elites. They are the people who have benefited the most from the government. Neither any of them has made a statement. I talked to one, a highly ranked guy, and he told me he doesn't want problem with the government. You know, this thing, government has not said anything. I said, what stops you from sending your daughter to send to my mobile money account 500 francs or 5,000 francs to get water for a kid to whom water is a luxury in another